It wasn't a piece of advice that changed my life, not a book, not a lecture, not a teacher. All of those were merely catalysts. The true reaction began when I dared to look myself in the eye and admit one thing. I had never truly loved myself in the right way. I had lived as if my worth had to be proven, had to be approved, had to be validated by someone else in order to justify my existence. And because of that, my life was steered by a series of behaviors that were never truly mine. Trying hard to be liked, compromising just to keep the peace, staying silent to avoid judgment, and sacrificing in hopes of being recognized. But the more I did that, the more hollow I felt, like a shadow molded by outside expectations. That was when I realized I could never build a real life if the first brick wasn't laid in self-love. Loving yourself isn't about what you buy for yourself or how you care for your body. It's about what you choose to live by. It's about whether you allow yourself to say no to what drains you, or whether you keep pretending because you're afraid of upsetting others. It's about whether you dare to go against expectations, pursue what you believe is right, or whether you still need the approving gaze of others to feel worthy. True love never comes from perfection. It comes from a decision. I will still stand by myself, even when I'm not good enough, not strong enough, not clear enough. Every major change in life begins with this decision. No one is coming to save you. The change starts when you stop abandoning yourself. You can't rewrite a new chapter if you keep living in the old one every day, blaming the past, your parents, your childhood, your circumstances. No one denies those wounds are real, but healing doesn't begin by pointing outward. It begins when you ask, from today on, do I still want to live in that repetition? If the answer is no, then you have to act differently. You must redefine your self-worth based on something other than what others think. Your value doesn't lie in the roles you carry, the money you make, or the number of people who like you. It lies in how you treat yourself every single day when no one's watching, no one's applauding, no one's noticing. A person who loves themselves doesn't need to be rescued. They know how to save themselves. Not through fake toughness, but through deep honesty. I may have been hurt, but I won't let pain control me. I may have made mistakes, but I won't keep punishing myself forever. I may have been weak, but I won't live as a victim for life. The decision to love yourself is a silent but powerful turning point because it hands you back the wheel of your own life. And here's the truth that's hard to accept. If you don't love yourself, you will seek love from others in a dependent way. You'll let others define who you are, whether you're worthy, how you should live. You'll always need reassurance, always need praise, always need someone else to make you feel enough. And that makes you vulnerable to manipulation, to being used, to being hurt by careless words. But when you love yourself, you become your own reference point. You no longer need to prove, to stand out, or to compete. You know. You are worthy, even if no one acknowledges it. Thank you to understand something clearly. Loving yourself is not selfishness. It's not abandoning others. It's the only foundation that allows you to love anyone else in a healthy way. Someone who doesn't know how to love themselves, no matter how hard they try, is still loving from a place of lack. They give in order to receive. They sacrifice to be recognized. They act out of fear of losing rather than from true freedom. True love begins when you no longer need someone else to fill you, because you are already full inside. So where do you start? Start by placing your hand on your chest and making a promise. From today on, I will no longer betray myself. No more betrayal by lying about your feelings. No more betrayal by living against your values. No more betrayal by staying in relationships that shrink you. Every day, you choose to stand by yourself in the smallest actions. One moment of daring to say no. One moment of choosing rest. One moment of speaking your truth. One moment of letting go of what no longer fits. That is the deepest act of self-love. Your life doesn't change because of someone else. Not a teacher, not a life partner, not a miracle can change what you're not willing to change yourself. They can open the door, but only you can walk through it. They can inspire you, but only you can create momentum. Stop waiting for someone to make you feel worthy. You've always been worthy. From the moment you dared to believe in your own value, from the moment you stopped asking for permission to exist, and from the moment you chose to love yourself as an action, not just a feeling, you can begin again, but not by chasing something new, by returning to yourself and looking deep into the mirror. The only person you need to make peace with is the one staring back at you. That is where everything begins. And that is where you'll find the power to rewrite your entire life in a way that no one but you can, because this life is yours. And only when you love yourself in the truest sense will you have the energy to turn it into a masterpiece that no one else can replicate. A life designed by you, not borrowed from anyone's expectations. Have you ever reached a milestone you once longed for, only to feel a nameless emptiness afterward? Have you ever been praised, acknowledged, and yet still felt as if you were wearing a thick mask you couldn't take off? That's because you were living by the wrong compass. You chose achievement as your guide, validation as your guiding light, but forgot the most important element, joy. Not the shallow joy that comes from fleeting satisfaction, but the deep, lasting kind that arises when you are living in alignment with your true self. Many people dive into personal growth as if it were a race. They make plans, set goals, mark every milestone, and then compare themselves to others. Every step forward becomes not a source of joy, but a measurement of whether they're good enough yet. And when the numbers don't rise as expected, when results don't come as quickly as they'd hoped, they begin to doubt themselves. They forget that goals are not meant to torment them, but to guide them toward a more meaningful way of living. And that meaning is impossible to find if every step is weighed down by stress, fear, and pressure from external expectations. I once believed that joy was a reward that came afterward, that I had to prove I was worthy, pay my dues, achieve enough, and only then would I have the right to enjoy life. But I was wrong. Joy isn't the ending, it's the beginning. It's the starting energy, the first heartbeat of a soulful life. When you choose joy as your compass, you no longer need an external reason to feel fulfilled. You don't need anyone's approval to know you're on the right path. You don't have to wait for success to begin living. You start living right now. Take a look at yourself. What makes you feel truly alive? What makes you lose track of time, feel light and fully present? Those are signals of genuine joy. And when you begin to shape your life around those things, even the smallest ones, you'll notice a subtle but profound shift. You no longer work to prove, but to express. You no longer learn to catch up, but to nourish your inner world. You no longer help others to be acknowledged, but because your heart is overflowing. Joy does not exclude effort. On the contrary, it is the most powerful fuel for perseverance. When you are joyful doing what you believe in, you're not quick to quit. When you delight in the journey, you don't need anyone to push you. Sustainable joy isn't about everything going smoothly, but about the feeling that you're living truthfully, not acting, not straining, not pretending. It is a kind of deep peace that no amount of applause can ever replace. What matters is that you are brave. Because choosing joy also means you'll have to say no to the crowded roads, the societal expectations, the prepackaged definitions of success. You'll have to learn to disappoint others so you don't disappoint yourself. You'll have to learn to slow down, to hear your inner voice again. You'll have to learn to change course, even when the old path looked dazzling but no longer makes you feel alive. It's a challenging journey, but the right kind of challenge. And there is no greater reward than living in the clarity of your own spirit. Don't confuse joy with comfort. Comfort can keep you stagnant. Joy propels you forward, even when the path ahead is uncertain. Joy isn't always pleasant. Sometimes it's the sweat you shed while doing what you love, the loneliness when you choose the road less traveled, the anxiety when you leave behind what's safe to live more truthfully. But within all that, you feel more fully alive than ever before. Remember, the happiest person isn't the one who achieves the most, but the one who clearly understands what brings them to life and dares to build a life around it. They're not people without struggles. They're people who refuse to let those struggles extinguish their inner fire. And that fire is sustained only by true joy, not by titles or shallow attention. And when you live in joy, you become a source of nourishment for others. You don't have to explain much. Your energy already leads the way. Those around you will feel that natural light and begin to question their own lives. Not out of envy, but inspiration, not out of comparison, but awakening. Because you've shown them another choice, to live from within, not to be pulled by the outside. You don't need to do something grand to prove you're living right. Sometimes it's simply that you dare to change an old habit. Dare to listen to your body. Dare to say, I don't want this. Dare to choose a slower path, but one that's more real. These are quiet but powerful choices, and they are what create a life worth living, not a list of accomplishments. So, starting today, ask yourself, what truly brings me joy? Am I living in alignment with that or sacrificing it for validation? And if I chose joy as my compass, what would I do differently right now? The answer lies with you. And the path only reveals itself when you take the first steps in the light of your inner truth, not under the spotlight of someone else's stage. You have the right to live a life that is both deep and joyful, a life that doesn't need to please the world but still makes you smile every morning when you wake up. And that's not wishful thinking, it's a real choice, one that begins the moment you stop measuring your worth by applause and start listening to the voice of your own heart. Every day you're living within a current that you often don't even notice. The flow of energy from the people you meet, the words you hear, the habits you observe, and even the invisible atmosphere surrounding you. Your environment isn't just about geography or physical surroundings. It's the totality of mental, emotional, and psychological influences you breathe in every single day. And whether you're aware of it or not, that environment is never neutral. And very natural, it's meaningless. It's either lifting you up or silently pulling you down. You might have a brilliant plan, a clear goal, even a firm will. But if you place yourself in the midst of constant complaints, skeptical glances, negative conversations, or stagnant habits, you'll soon be assimilated. It doesn't take a major conflict, nor someone directly sabotaging your dreams. Just a little delay each day, a realistic but mediocre piece of advice, a casual remark that plants doubt in your mind. That's enough to slowly steer you away from the path you once chose. On the other hand, if you step into an environment where everyone is striving to grow, where people talk about solutions instead of wallowing in complaints, where success isn't something to envy but a source of inspiration, you will be nourished. Even if you're still figuring things out, even if you're not perfect, simply being in such a space makes it impossible for you to keep living in mediocrity. You begin to think differently, act differently, respond differently, not because you're forced to, but because that environment awakens the noblest part of who you are. The question is not, am I being affected by my environment, but rather, is the environment I'm living in worthy of the person I'm becoming? Many people are trapped in toxic cycles without even realizing it, simply because they've become too accustomed to complaining, to lowering expectations, to superficial relationships, to a rhythm of life void of light. And they console themselves by saying, that's just life. But no, it's merely a distorted version of life, shaped by a flawed environment. You don't have to cut everything off and start over, but you do need to be honest. Take a good look at every relationship, every space you spend time in, every conversation you frequently hear. Is it making you stronger or shrinking you? Is it expanding your vision or confining you to safety? Is it making you believe you're capable of more or making you feel like you're asking for too much? These answers won't be easy to hear, but they are the starting point for reclaiming ownership of your life. Here's a hard truth. Sometimes the person slowing your progress is your closest friend. Sometimes the words that make you doubt yourself come from family, not because they're bad people, but because they live within their own frame of reference, and their limits shouldn't become yours. You don't need to hate anyone, nor declare war, but you do have the right to create distance in order to protect your path. You have the right to not listen, the right to quietly shift your rhythm, change your responses, and redesign your mental space. Seek and nurture the connections that help you grow. People who don't just clap when you succeed, but who dare to speak the truth when you're off track. People who don't just talk positively, but live positively with consistency. People who make you want to live better, work more kindly, and be braver every day. Simply through their presence. These aren't loud motivators. They're often quiet, but their energy makes it impossible for you to return to your old way of living. If you don't yet have such people around you, don't despair. You can seek them out in books, podcasts, communities, learning spaces, public places, even online. You can be the one to start a new environment. You can build a mental ecosystem of your own where every choice, every conversation, every space you step into reminds you that you are here to rise, not to repeat. A nourishing environment isn't free. It demands that you step out of your comfort zone, that you accept initial feelings of loneliness, that you bravely say no to the things that once made you feel safe. But the price of staying in a toxic environment is far greater. It's the silent erosion of belief, the stifling of potential, and the day you wake up and no longer recognize who you've become. Remember, you're not only the product of your thoughts, you're also the product of what you absorb. And you're absorbing everything from your environment: language, expression, expectations, norms. If you're not careful, you'll slowly become a replica of the crowd around you, without realizing you've lost the most unique part of yourself. You can't change everything around you overnight, but you can start by filtering. Who truly deserves your time? Which spaces deserve your presence? And which sounds deserve entry into your mind each day? This is not selfishness, it is wisdom. Because you are choosing to protect the person you are becoming. Finally, engrave this truth in your mind. No environment is harmless. If it's not helping you expand, it's constricting you. If it's not inspiring you, it's making you doubt. And if you don't actively choose your environment, it will choose for you in ways you cannot control. So begin to take ownership of your living space, not just physically, but energetically. Because where you place yourself is where you are sowing the seeds of your destiny. There is a subtle trap that has led countless people astray on their path of personal growth, the trap called perfection. It wears the shiny disguise of discipline, professionalism, and high standards. But beneath it lies a mental burden that constantly makes you feel inadequate, unworthy, unfinished. You try to fix every little flaw, delay the first steps because you're not ready, avoid taking action because things don't feel just right, and while you wait to become perfect, real life quietly passes you by. Perfection is an illusion. It doesn't exist in the real world, it only lives in your imagination of how things should be. You envision the best version of yourself, flawless, unshaken, never lost, and then bind yourself to that image. But each time reality unfolds differently than you hoped, you feel like a failure. Not because you're lacking, but because you've been comparing yourself to a standard no real human can attain. Progress, on the other hand, is real. It happens in small steps. It can be measured, felt, and sustained. Progress is when you dare to stand up after a fall, when you fix mistakes instead of hiding them, when you keep going even at a slow pace. It doesn't ask you to be amazing right now. It only asks that you become a little more consistent than yesterday, a little more honest with yourself, a little more willing to take one small step each day. And if you can do that, you are already living in a way that perfection can never reach. Great people didn't build their lives through perfection. They built through progress. They learned from mistakes, accepted not knowing, and started with the small things others ignored. Day by day, month by month, year by year, they turned consistency into strength. No one remembers them for being flawless. They're remembered because they never stopped. That's the difference between someone chasing appearances and someone truly creating value. You don't need to begin with a perfect plan. You just need to begin. Action creates clarity. Action exposes weaknesses so you can train. Action builds momentum for learning. Every step, no matter how imperfect, brings you closer to the person you want to become. And if you're still hesitating because you're not good enough, ask yourself again, am I waiting to be perfect before I live? Or will I live in order to grow better? One of the most damaging effects of perfectionism is that you become too harsh with yourself. Every small mistake becomes a crisis. Every piece of criticism becomes a wound, and gradually you lose kindness toward yourself. But true growth only happens when you're able to be compassionate with yourself, when you understand that you will make mistakes, and that doesn't make you less valuable. Every person you admire today was once a beginner, but they didn't stop. Focus on what you can do today to be better than yesterday. An honest conversation with yourself. A good habit sustained for 3 days. A difficult choice you dared to face. That is progress. It may not be dazzling like a performance, but it brings the deepest kind of transformation. Progress doesn't make an instant impression. It's steady, quiet, and unwavering. But if you stay with it long enough, it will take you to places perfection never could. The truth of your capacity and your real worth. You won't escape comparison. In a world full of edited images and achievements presented as instant results, you'll feel like you're falling behind. But don't let others make you forget where you're going. Your journey is unique. Your pace is real. Look back at what you've overcome. The wounds you've healed, the limits you've pushed, the days you didn't quit even when no one noticed. That is progress, and it deserves to be honored. Each time you feel like you're not enough, change the question. Don't ask, why am I still not as good as them? Ask instead, what did I learn today? What did I stick with even though no one told me to? Where was I brave in a way I used to avoid? Those answers will return you to the true process, not illusion, not glitter, but solid and clear. Redefine success for yourself. Not finishing faster than others, not getting everything right the first time, but not giving up, allowing yourself to learn slowly but surely. Knowing you're not there yet, but choosing to keep learning. Repeating behavior even when no one's watching. That is the power of someone who doesn't chase perfection, but chooses to become better every day. When you commit to progress, you create a positive feedback loop. Each successful step builds belief. That belief fuels energy. That energy drives stronger action. And then you take another step. Not because you've become perfect, but because you're no longer obsessed with being perfect. You've become free. Ultimately, remember this: perfection is a subtle trap, while progress is a real path. One exists only in imagination, the other can be lived every day. So, which will you choose? To be